In the years since 9/11, scores of highly regarded individuals have gone public to express their serious doubts about 9/11. These include former presidential advisor and CIA analyst Ray McGovern, the father of Reaganomics and former Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, BYU physics professor Stephen Jones, former German Defense Minister Andres von Bülow, former MI5 officer David Shaler, former Blair cabinet member Michael Meacher, former chief economist for the Department of Labor during President George W. Bush's first term, Dr. Morgan Reynolds, and many more. In early June of 2006, we traveled to Chicago to meet with fellow 9/11 truth seekers and expose the official story as a fraud.
You cannot hide the truth. You will not hide the truth. It's coming out. Your crimes are coming out. Ladies and gentlemen, 9/11 is an inside job. It's a self-inflicted wound. It's a government false flag. Terror operation. Research it. More people are waking up every single day. More people realize what the stakes are. They love their families, and they understand that the government is carrying out terrorist attacks as a pretext to re-engineer America into a police state. Why? To capture us to be their political slaves, to use us as an engine of global empire, to invade the planet.
While in Chicago, we had a chance to again speak with former MI5 agent Andy Michaud.
I'm convinced that 9/11 was an inside job. And there are a number of compelling reasons why I think it was an inside job. Primarily, the collapse of the Twin Towers, which look to me to be controlled demolitions. Also the collapse of Building 7 of the World Trade Center complex. Also the fact that the air defences were stood down that day, who benefited from the attacks, of course. So there were a lot of put options put on the airlines that suffered during those attacks. It's a whole range of different evidence that adds up to something very, very suspicious about 9/11. I feel passionately that we need to expose the government involvement in 9/11, because if we don't, they will keep doing this in future. There will be another attack in order to justify another unjustifiable war.
We also spoke with Dr. Morgan Reynolds.
No matter how much our inert public wants to avoid this, it's eating away. It's willful denial, willful ignorance. It's eating away at the underbelly of America. And we aren't going to solve our problems by ignoring 9/11. The biggest smoking gun then and now is WTC-7. How can anyone watch it without some kind of a psyop or verbiage accompanying it and not look at that and say, hey, that building was just demolished, just the way the Las Vegas Sands was, or the Seattle Stadium, etc. Just there's no way around that. Here we are in so-called broad daylight. It's 5:20 p.m. and we've got cameras on it. And what other explanation can there be for this very conventional-looking collapse when under 7 seconds? That just has crime, inside job written all over it. We need real convictions. We need arrests. We need prosecutions.
We also had a chance to speak to Professor Stephen Jones, who is a doctor of physics, concerning new bombshell evidence that conclusively proves that thermite was used to cut the main pillars in the World Trade Center towers.
There is this molten material flowing out of the South Tower just before its collapse. There's a large quantity of yellow hot metal. And then I read about these pools of molten metal underneath both towers and Building 7 after their collapses. Now that fits like a glove with the thermite reaction, which produces molten iron. You also see in these videos of this molten metal coming up, you see this white ash, this dust that comes off. Now that combination, yellow hot molten metal, white ash floating away, that's his signature characteristic for thermite. And then finally we got some samples of this metal, the previously molten metal. Using advanced techniques like proton-induced X-ray emission and an electron microprobe, we found out what's in these samples. we're finding iron, also sulfur, potassium, and manganese. And these are characteristic of a variation of thermite, which is used to cut through steel very rapidly. It's called thermate. It's like, sure, you can take a knife, you take the butter out of the fridge, and you cut through that butter. Now, adding sulfur to thermite and also potassium permanganate, these chemicals, it's like heating up your knife to a very high temperature. Now it slices right through the butter. Even if the butter is cold, slices right through. Same way here, by adding sulfur and potassium permanganate to thermite, it'll now slice through structural steel very rapidly. But the end products then, you'll have sulfur and potassium, manganese, and iron. And that's what we see. Thermite had to be planted in the buildings, which of course implies directly an inside job. Someone had to have access into the buildings.
Then in mid-March of 2006, actor Charlie Sheen went public on my syndicated radio show and simply called for a new independent investigation and questioned the official story. Sheen knew that the establishment lapdogs would attack his personal past, whether real or manufactured, instead of challenging him on the facts. So Charles Sheen preemptively challenged them to challenge him on the facts, something they steadfastly refused to do. Literally hundreds of vicious hit pieces were written in newspapers worldwide. Every old rumor was dredged up and thrown at Sheen, and a fresh raft of allegations was launched at him. The only national television program that was fair in its presentation was Showbiz Tonight with A.J. Hammer on CNN.
On Showbiz Tonight, Charlie Sheen speaks out on a controversial theory that the government covered up what really happened on 9/11.
Taking over 4 commercial airliners and hitting 75% of their targets, that feels like a conspiracy theory.
Tonight, we dig even deeper. The host of the radio show on which Sheen leveled his startling allegations joins us live right here on Showbiz Tonight. The radio host who interviewed Sheen is Alex Jones of the Genesis Communications Network. Alex joins me live from Austin, Texas to talk about Sheen's riveting comments. Alex, as I mentioned, the response that we got from doing this story last night, absolutely shocking. So I want to know how it actually all came about. How did the interview with Charlie Sheen actually happen? Did you guys reach out to him? Did he call you? What was the deal?
Well, just to make something clear, Mr. Sheen has amazing courage to do what he's done, and he contacted me. He's been watching my documentaries for years. He's one of the most informed people that I've talked to in Hollywood on this subject. Listen, for years, Hollywood's been on fire with people knowing the truth about 9/11, and I was the first to expose 9/11 on the day. In fact, 2 months before, I had intel that elements of the military-industrial complex were going to carry out the attack. I said they'll use bin Laden, the known CIA asset, as their patsy to take the blame for attacking the towers. So Mr. Sheen is only exceptional in that he has courage in going public, courage that no one else in Hollywood had. I mean, here's a CNN poll from Anderson Cooper a year and a half ago where they said, is the government covering up 9/11? Could they be involved? 90% when the poll closed on CNN said this. So listen, I have my own syndicated show. I've done 4,000 radio interviews in the last 4.5 years. Almost no one calls in and disagrees now. We have the majority view, and we have the evidence. And bottom line, there are declassified U.S. government documents like Operation Northwoods that ABC News reported on back in 2000. Operation Northwoods, Google it, and in there the U.S. government, an element of it said we want to hijack jets by remote control, crash them, and blame it on the Soviet Union and Cuba. Now, that was decades ago. This is why we believe this.
Right.
Then you look at the official story, the firefighters, the police, hundreds of them saying there were bombs in the buildings. They were told to shut up. You look at Building 7, detonators are going off. You can see the explosions.
And Alex, a lot of this is what Charlie Sheen was covering. I'm actually just curious, did he reach out to you guys? Is he the one who put the call into you?
Sure,
is that how he wound up on your show?
Sure, he called me a few weeks ago and said that he loves this country. He has nothing to gain from this. I mean, in fact, it's dangerous for him to do. But he said, I love this country and my kids so much that I'm going to do this, Alex. And I said, God bless you, because now it may spur other Hollywood people who've got major pull, who know the truth, to start going public. Look, it's really simple. Let's understand this, okay? 9/11 was an inside job. It was a self-inflicted wound, and what Charlie Sheen is doing is just amazing, and he can only be commended for it, and all he's calling for is a real investigation. I go further at Infowars.com